Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for tonight's vBrownBag. I am your host, Tom Green, and we are going to talk Inspec-VMware. To do that, we have invited an expert, JJ Asghar, and he will be walking us through Inspec-VMware in all of its glory. However, before we get started, we like to do a little housekeeping. We want you to get in on the conversation. We're monitoring Twitter and using hashtag vBrownBag and the @vBrownBag account. There's also monitored accounts for Latin America, Europe, and Brazil. If you wish to join in some of the foreign language fun, you can tweet at them or join their shows. They are scheduled here. You can always find our most up-to-date schedule at vbrownbag.com/brownbags. With that said, I'm going to hand things over to JJ.
Hey, yeah.
So, Jay, let's make you present.
All right, so you should be able to see a Chrome window and a terminal, yes?
Yep, I can see it.
Awesome, cool. So, hi, I'm JJ. So I'm here to talk about Inspec-VMware, just like Tom just introduced me. And I'm going to kind of do this little free form. That's how I present, so bear with me. My goal out of this is to give you something that you can build off of. So if you can see this URL, or it's just go to GitHub here, GitHub JJ Asghar, Inspec-VMware-example is the repo I'm going to be going through, where I actually have already a built-in narrative and a Vagrant file. So you can actually do this at home. And now, being that you're probably wondering, okay, JJ, so that's cool. What is this? The short of it is you probably have a rather large VMware infrastructure. I mean, I know some people have some home labs of 1 or 2 ESXi hosts, but day in and day out, when you're doing this professionally, you have hundreds and hundreds of machines you've got to deal with, or sometimes even thousands. And there are settings on those machines that you, as a human, probably waste a lot of time figuring out. Like, for instance, the example I'm going to be using is TSM SSH. And there is products out there that kind of verify and standardize on this stuff. But the beauty of using something called Inspec, which is compliance automation, you can actually put this in and have it continually check your infrastructure, which is pretty cool. And it's really low overhead, which is really nice too. All it does is it takes PowerCLI commands and injects them into the PowerShell interpreter, in this case on a Linux box, and just basically runs the command. So if I go ahead and show this command under this control, if you do a lot of PowerShell, if you look here at line 10, this might seem a little backwards, but as you can see, it just does a simple get VM host and then checks the services and then makes sure that it is set to false. So we are looking for the negative here of TSM SSH. Inspec does many more things. I'll go ahead and bring up inspec.io right here, where there is a whole world of languages of plugins to be able to do things inside of it. So not just checking ESXi, but you can check Windows machines. You can check Linux boxes. You can check FreeBSD boxes and be able to verify machines are in states you want them to be in. And there's even CIS profiles off of this too. So, but we are going to be focusing on Inspec-VMware because obviously this is vBrownBag and we want to see how this takes advantage of the VMware infrastructure. So again, do yourself a favor, check out inspec.io, and I cannot stress enough, it's very low overhead, and it's an English-like language, back to, as you saw here, where this is a simple control, there's a lot of metadata, there's one command, and then there's a simple describe block. So I realize that's a little bit of information, and I kind of jumped right in there, but that's kind of how I like to present, because more importantly, let's see the code and actually see how it actually comes together. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I have this ESXi box right here where there is 172.16.20.43, and I have the awesome password of root and password being the password. And as you can see, this is just a typical ESXi machine, nothing too crazy. And yes, this can work on with vCenter also, so you can actually check against vCenter. Now, if I had to take care of a bunch of machines out there, and I would have to go in and be like, as a human, be like, okay, gotta go check every single machine to make sure SSH isn't turned on, because that's an attack vector, right? Like that's not a good thing to be out and running on there. But I wouldn't want to go into every single one, log in, blah blah blah, do it every single time. And that's one of the advantages here, where I can actually come along and bundle exec. I can go ahead and run this exact profile, which I'm, as you can see, Inspec-VMware. This is the actual code in here. And I can run it against that 43 machine with a password of password. Obviously, you want to probably put more security around it and things like that, but this is a great way to do it. So imagine you have hundreds and hundreds of machines you got to go against, and you can write some logic around here to do it so you don't have to worry about it. But it only takes a handful of seconds for it to go out, reach out there, run the actual PowerShell command, and to verify to see the state, and then it comes back with green and red, which is really, really useful. Or in this case, check marks and X's if you can't see green or red. And you can have more advanced profiles so you actually see what's going on and be able to get this. And you can run as many times as you want. So in theory, you could have a monitoring solution of some sort to make sure that that junior admin doesn't accidentally keep SSH up and running. Now, I do want to kind of highlight this real quick, where it is to make sure the exit status is 0. This is actually really important. There were some conversations around this, but this actually makes sure that this command runs properly on the remote machine. If that doesn't make sense, I'll rephrase it. Inside of the Linux world, exit status 0 means it's completed or successful. So that's what's making sure that command is successful. I think that's also in PowerShell, come to think of it. But as you can see, with this error, we wanted to see if it was empty. And it turns out it returned false. It got true because it's not empty, because it's true. I realize it sounds a little backwards, but just to prove to you that this actually does do what I say it does, I'm going to go ahead and turn off SSH now on this machine. If I can click on my things. So I will go ahead and disable SSH. As you can see now, it's gone. And I will run it again. And it only takes a couple moments. So after Tom's introduction, I was doing this at Chef for a very long time. I no longer work for Chef, so I don't actually know the status of what's going on. But they do have the security guide, the ESXi security guide, now written with Inspec-VMware underneath it. So you can actually run, if you go to VMware.com, security guides, security, I think it's security or security guides. Hardening guides, there it is. So they actually have these security guides written as these inspect tests. So you can run these tests against your ESXi or your vCenter instances, and that's where the product called Automate comes into play. But I'm not going to dig a little bit deeper into that. I'm not going to dig into that because I no longer have access to it, being that I don't work there anymore. But it is these are still building blocks, and if you want to purchase that, you're more than welcome to. But I wanted to make sure that you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. You can just completely just go ahead and get it and run it. The last time I ran the test before leaving, it on one ESXi host, it took 2 minutes and 45 seconds to run every single check. So imagine you have those, and you can do this in parallel, should I mention too. So imagine you have those hundreds and hundreds of ESXi nodes that you had your boss told you to do the security hardening guide against. And instead of you going through that Excel spreadsheet, line by line, this way it automates it. And it is the actual power CLI commands against it. So you can actually edit it to make sure that it comes out exactly how your company policy is at. But again, as you can see here, everything's gone green again. It's successful control and 2 successful. So as you can see, it can scope out a little bit farther than that, which is great. It takes some really awesome advantages there. So again, I kind of want to just reiterate this code right here at JJ Asghar Inspec-VMware example. I have a Vagrant file here. So if you've ever played with Vagrant, all you have to do is Vagrant up, and it'll actually install everything you need to run, and then actually pull down this example so you can run it on your local machine as long as it has access to an ESXi host from that machine. So if you have like a sandboxed environment or something like that, you can play with it yourself and actually see how it comes together. You don't have to run this on Ubuntu. You can run this on Windows. Inspec does work on Windows, and as long as you can read the controls and be able to run to it, so you can just run it. The Inspec actual project, or Inspec-VMware, Inspec-VMware is right here, very top. Just Google Inspec-VMware. It's a nice resource pack. It's very easy to get to plug back in. As you can see, you can just export some things out if you want, and then you have the actual VI server to do the thing. And as you can see, you can have Windows on here too. So it's a great little tool to be able to drive and be able to write configuration, be able to basically create automated configurations for your infrastructures. The philosophy around Inspec is to basically write the code once and just have it run continuously in the background or however to make sure that it is up to the standards of your company. Security is extremely important, and it requires effort, but this does take away some of that effort, which is really, really nice.
Hey, JJ.
Sure.
Does it run on CentOS as well?
Absolutely. It runs on every major operating system out there, ranging from Ubuntu, Debian, to CentOS, to RHEL. They actually have CIS profiles directly specific for CentOS. So you can absolutely play around with that. If you go to inspec.io, which is Tom, do we have like show notes or something like that that I can put together for everybody with all the links and all?
It'll be on the YouTube post, and I'll have it on blog.vbrownbag.com.
Perfect. So I'll get you all those links. But if you go to inspec.io, also if you just play around with the tutorial just shows you how to drive Inspec as just on a normal machine. And then as soon as you understand how that machine works or that VM works, taking it to the next step with a plugin like Inspec-VMware, you'll see how it all just comes together. And because of the overhead is so little to run this, because it takes a connection out to it. There is no agent. It doesn't sit on the box continually reporting back. It is a go out to the machine, see the status, report back. All it does is reporting, and that's very important to make clear, because that's what it's designed to do. If you will, it inspects. Get it? Inspects. Yeah, inspects the state of the machine and reports back to a centralized location, whether it be Chef Automate, which is the paid product, or in this case, the CLI to give out some nice big green and red check marks. So that's really the gist of what I wanted to go over. I know I shot through it pretty quickly, but that's the beauty of it. As soon as you kind of get your head wrapped around it and you play around with it, you see the power of it, and hopefully it'll make your lives a little better. Tom, can I open up for questions now?
Yeah, sure. If anybody has questions, you can ask JJ. Also, I do have a question about if you were wanting to run it, use the complete open source version of this, would you be able to set some sort of like a cron job or something to to run it and output it to some like CSV or something?
Actually, yes. So there are some use cases out there where so Inspec can actually report not just to the command line, but it can send out to a JSON blob. And there are products out there like, for instance, Sensu, which is a monitoring solution, actually has a plugin for Inspec. So it can continually run your compliance profiles that you decide to have to validate, to make sure that everything comes out how you expect it to. And if anything's out of compliance, it can report it back to Sensu, that reports back to your monitoring solution of whatever you choose to use. And again, Automate is the paid product that has all that stuff built in. So it's more of the do you want to buy the product to be able to build it, or do you want to build it? Personally, with the way that I learned how Inspec works and how Automate is, and this is, as I say, I no longer work for Chef, but what they've done with Automate to get the compliance story inside of it, and the little store inside of Automate with all the different CIS profiles, you can, with a couple clicks, be able to run against your whole infrastructure to see if you're in the status of what CIS stats are, or if you don't know what CIS is, computer information security. It's like a de facto way of good standards for the internet. And they also have like some HIPAA stuff in there, and they have some PCI compliance things in there too. So you can validate to make sure your infrastructure is up to standards, that you can go to your CIO and say, here's all the information you need to know that is being continually ran every single day to make sure it's in the state that it needs to be in, instead of that one time every 6 months that you have to run it and spend that week and a half of making sure you're up to standard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And you showed where to go to get some of the packs, but are those open source, or are they pay license to get the VMware hardening guide pack?
Good question. So the actual compliance profiles, like the VMware hardening one, is a paid one. The profiles up to, I think, so there are some open source free profiles, but there are some that are not. If you go to automate.chef.io and pull down the 30-day trial, you'll actually see what is paid and what is not. And obviously, it is open source, but that doesn't technically mean free, if you will. So all the plugins, all the ways to drive Inspec inside of your infrastructure is open source, and you can use it. But if you decide to do some of the supported profiles, like the hardening guide for VMware, or some of the HIPAA stuff that exists, Chef has whole teams of people who are writing these compliance profiles to validate, to make sure that they exist how they need to do. So again, just go to automate.chef.io, pull down the Chef Automate, and run the compliance application inside of it, and you'll see the store, I believe is what it's called, and all the different compliance profiles out there. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
And as you're kind of walking this out, everything kind of deploys in crawl, walk, run.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the beginning use cases you're seeing people either in like labs, or just deploying it out to a test environment beyond SSH? What do you see people checking before going full bore into hardening guides?
Great question. So most people, let's take a quick step back and say, before people even mess with Inspec-VMware, getting Inspec to do shifting left in their deployment pipelines for a VM. So you have rando boss telling you need to get that CentOS box out inside your VMware infrastructure, so they can install some application for some developer, right? Well, getting Inspec to validate to make sure that you have the correct SSH keys on there, you have the correct versions of Nginx or whatever on there, and then putting it earlier in your pipeline to get it there, to make sure that before the time you get it to your developer, it's up to your security standards, is actually usually the first step. After that, then you start going up and down the stack. So now you have a VM that is up to your company's standards of whatever your securities is. Then you realize that Inspec, like for instance using Inspec-VMware, can go underneath the VM and start looking at ESXi. And then you realize with ESXi, again, the first easy one is to make sure TSM SSH is enabled. And then maybe, for instance, locked mode, or what is the term? I forget now. Lockdown. The lockdown mode is enabled, right? To make sure that you only can go through vCenter to configure the ESXi host. You can't go directly to it, right? Well, when you go in there and it does the check using PowerCLI and lockdown mode is enabled, PowerCLI can still actually talk to the ESXi host. So you can do all the other checks. And again, that little junior admin might need to go into the machine to do some work and turn off lockdown mode. And if your company policy is no longer is to have lockdown mode everywhere, and they forget to turn it back on, and you only check this every 6 months, using something like Inspec to validate it every day, every hour, every 10 minutes, whatever, you'll be able to have that visibility so you don't have that attack vector opened earlier and earlier. Does that make sense?
Yep, it makes a ton of sense.
So this is a very, very powerful tool that that you can do some really awesome things with. But again, and I want to make sure I reiterate this, it is just a reporter. It just reports what's going on, and it doesn't change anything for you.
Yeah, it was going to be my follow-up was whenever you get this information, that you would manually have to do remediation, or can you feed that into a system that'll go do the thing?
So there are some there are opinions there, and like for instance, you can use Chef to do some of this work for you. You can have Chef drive some PowerCLI commands. And sorry, 1 second. Sorry about that. It's gotta love working from home. So you can run something like Chef to be able to do some of that remediation for you, but Inspec is just a reporter, and I'm reiterating that because that's designed. It gives you the information and you decide as an engineer or as an operator or whatever you want to call yourself to make the changes that you need to do. It just throws the red flag, and then you use whatever system you want to do. Like for instance, you can use Ansible, for instance, to make the changes if you need. There's nothing, you don't have to use Chef. You can use Ansible, Puppet, whatever, or just straight PowerShell for that matter, or PowerCLI. Inspec is its own product, and it does its own thing and reports back to whatever centralized system you use. Does that make sense?
Yep, it's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to check Twitter here real quick to see if I see anything over there. But yeah, can you start telling people how to get a hold of you and how they can reach out to learn more?
Yeah. So I'll work with Tom to make sure that everybody gets the links that I mentioned. And it is an open source project, as I said earlier. On the Chef community Slack, there is the Inspec channel, which you will find people who don't use Chef, that they just use Inspec, and they communicate and work on there. It has a pretty quick cadence of updates, which is really nice. You can find me on Twitter. Is usually the easiest place to find me at JJ Asghar, JJ Asghar. And as I said, I do work at IBM now, or I don't know if I said that, but I said that now. But I am very active inside of our communities. and I'm here to help. That is my job. I take that very seriously, and I want to be accessible to anyone using this. And the I acknowledge that this stuff is hard. I acknowledge that it requires effort to learn, but I'm more than willing to help however it can get there. So all you got to do is reach out to me on whatever medium. JJ Asghar on Twitter is probably the easiest one, or throw in an issue inside that GitHub repo with the example and say, why is this not working? And I'm more than willing to help you on that. Tom can attest to this. I kind of bent. I hope at least he thinks that I try to trip over myself to be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. It's almost annoyingly helpful. No, it's great having somebody like JJ to support you and help you whenever you're trying to get involved is one of the great parts of the community, and a lot of why we want to have him here talking about this, because everyone should follow him, everyone should know him. He's great. You can reach out and ask him any weird questions, and he'll try to help you, no matter what it is. As long as he has a resource, he'll get somebody to you. So it's great. Thank you very much. That was some cool information. Hopefully, it'll help people, and they'll reach out and get it going, set up, and inspecting their environments.
Awesome.
So thanks again, JJ, and thanks everyone for tuning in or watching on YouTube. Yep. See you next week.
Thanks.